class. In the past, we've let the centers come up, the new centers, and they have about 20 minutes and about 30 slides. And this year we've said, okay, let's see if you can do what your students are doing. And your students are going to be doing this in 90 seconds. And we're going to go easy on the center directors, and we're going to give you 3 minutes, 3 whole minutes. And the new center directors, we're going to be even easier. We'll give you 7 minutes. So the idea is that you're supposed to present 1 or 2 really key, interesting, neat pieces of work, achievements that you've done with the ERC over the years that the ERC, you've had your ERC. Or if you're a new center, what do you plan to do? Tell us what your plans are, where you think your key accomplishments are going to be, what your vision is for where you're going. And then, hopefully, the audience, all of you all, will be very interested in hearing this because you'll just get a taste. It'll just be like a teaser there, a taste of what they're doing. And afterwards, we're going to be in here about 40, 45 minutes for the presentations. Then afterwards, we have about 45 minutes outside, and each of these 9 centers that'll be presenting now will have a table outside. And you can go out and talk to them individually and follow up on anything that you find particularly interesting. So this is just your little teaser. And everyone, in your packets, you have this green sheet of paper. If you want to pull that out, you can follow along with who's speaking. And there's a little teeny-weeny bit of spot to take a note. So if you want to jot something down or note that you want to go look up that person when they're standing outside or look up that team to talk to them later, it's all there on the green sheet of paper. So how this is going to work is we have this timer thing here, which is here and also up here for the speaker. And as I said, it's 3 minutes for the current center directors and 7 minutes for the new center directors. And so for you speakers, what will happen is 10 seconds before your time runs out, I was told that the yellow light will come on. And when your time is done, the red light comes on. So your goal as a speaker is to be done talking before the red light comes on. And my goal, or my job, is going to be, if you're not done by the time the red light comes on, I have to somehow escort you off the stage so the next person can come up. So I'll have to work on that. And I won't be introducing in between. So to make it, so when the person ahead of you finishes up, please just make your way up here and you'll do your own introduction. And then at the end, I have a couple of comments, wrap-up things, and a couple of logistical announcements before we go out again to mingle and where you can find out more from people about what they're working on. So, without further ado, I'd like to invite up Dr. Bob Karlichek from Rensselaer, who's doing the smart lighting ERC. And I will show you how to work the screen here. That's forward, that's backwards, and he said it comes up there.
Okay, so I should hit forward and go right now? Yep. Okay, well, I'd like to talk a little bit about the smart lighting ERC. We just entered our 4th year this year. And our aim is to revolutionize what people think about what lighting systems can do. 120 years ago, the light bulb was invented, and it revolutionized all of our lives by allowing us to stay up with light all night. The fluorescent bulbs came along soon thereafter, but in the end, we're seeing LEDs start to promulgate into the workplace to drive semiconductor lighting that ideally will never burn out and be much more energy efficient. But we've barely tapped the potential of digital lighting, with semiconductors now being able to make every color of the rainbow, including some colors that aren't in the rainbow, like UV and IR, and being able to control them pretty much at will. So we see a revolutionary future in lighting, well beyond LED bulbs, to be able to define what lighting can do for us that lighting could never do before. We define it as major societal benefits for society in the areas of expanded energy efficiency, health, and productivity. And we view it as an immersive system. We're all immersed in artificial light all the time, but it doesn't really do much for us. So I'd ask you to consider what a digital lighting system that was actually sensory could do for you. For example, our lighting system that we have in this room right now is not very smart, and it's not even very good, but it provides light, and that's really all that we expect of it. But imagine, if you will, a lighting system that could in fact see where its light is going and direct where its light needs to be, actually tailor the intensity and the presence of light based on lights communicating with lights. In other words, instead of having lighting systems that are blind, have lighting systems that can see, and then react to their environment to be able to tailor their light to the needs of the occupants and of the facilities. This morning we had the projector on, the lights needed to be dimmed, but what if the projector was blinking a digital pattern that sensors and the lights could see? So the lights would know when the projector was on and automatically dim to appropriate lighting levels to be able to facilitate productivity with no human interaction. These are the kinds of things that we're starting to investigate, but we can go well beyond that. To be able to go beyond that, we're actually taking a look at being able to leverage the existence of the three-plane diagram to develop some interesting properties to drive the high-level center goals. And if I would have to say one thing about the smart lighting ERC, especially with regard to the rapid changes that we're seeing in the global lighting industry, is that the center and the faculty members and the students have contributed to what I consider to be some real thought leadership in being able to define what the future of smart lighting is going to be. And that's attracted a wide variety of industries from across the globe to approach us on how to partner on developing future smart lighting systems. Because guess what? Those people that make LED light bulbs today that never burn out, what are they going to be selling 10 years from now when everybody still has the exact same light bulb that doesn't need to be replaced? They're going to have to start selling smart lighting systems that provide additional advantages. To be able to do that and to leverage the partnerships that we have with our academic and industrial partners, we focused on developing very high-level test beds that initially are partitioned into verticals to be able to drive that research. And then, you can see I'm out of time, and of course we focus on education. You know, I've never done anything in 3 minutes, and so my students who have been doing elevator pitch are going to be laughing at me now, but a little bit about what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you. You know how to work the, just pass it forward button. You get 7 minutes.
Have we started the timer? I feel like I'm on Jeopardy. Oh, okay. I hit the button, I guess. Well, my name is Dick Luthi. I'm a professor at Stanford University and the director of the new Engineering Research Center on reinventing our urban water infrastructure. This center is a partnership between Stanford University, UC Berkeley, Colorado School of Mines, and New Mexico State University. Our goal is to transform the way in which we use, reuse, and manage our urban water resources. And we want to do this in ways that consumes less energy, uses less material resources, and meets the needs of urban users and provides ecosystem services as well. So that's a tall order. And I've started out with the three-plane diagram here to illustrate that our urban water systems really has all the hallmarks of a complex system. And you can see some of this here, where there's interaction between the technologies that we might use, the test beds in which we try them out, and also assessments at the level of institutions and management. Think of this as more like a different kind of a test bed that would be metropolitan scale, like the whole of the Greater Bay Area, for example. I wanted to put this problem in a little bit of perspective. It's a common story throughout the whole of the U.S. that our urban water infrastructure is at the end of its design life, basically 50 to 100 years old. So something's going to be done, and the question is, do we replace with what we have, or do we do something different? And like in the case that we saw at lunch with the city of Greensburg, we can do something different. Now, we're 4 institutions located in the far west and the southwest, and we have pressures that are a bit different from here in Washington and the Northeast and the Midwest. We have to deal with issues of water scarcity, we have to deal with issues of population increase, and we have to deal with issues of leaving water and providing water for ecosystem services. So that gives different dimensions to the water problems and water infrastructure problems we have in the areas in which we're located than, say, in the wetter areas of the Midwest and the Northeast, for example. If I could make this, there we are. I want to illustrate what we have planned in terms of our research. It's in 3 thrust areas. One is in engineered systems, and there are a couple of graphics here. The idea, let me give you just 2 examples here. One idea is that we could use the energy that's embodied within the constituents in wastewater to power water reclamation systems themselves. So this would be an energy neutral, maybe even energy positive water reclamation system. Now that's really a transformative idea. Water reclamation that takes no energy. Another one is to use existing technologies that are currently underutilized in our field or not used in certain combinations of ways. An example of this would be to provide water of different tailored qualities to use for different purposes. I also show examples here of some natural systems, and our work will look at natural systems and how we can bring them into part of our urban water infrastructure, in which we can understand how natural systems can improve water quality, help enhance our water supply, and provide social and ecological benefits as well. These kinds of systems are not really embraced so much now because we don't know how they work reliably. We can't optimize them. We don't know how to predict their performance to justify investments, for example. So I give you two graphics here, one that shows a managed wetland system in which we could better manage wetlands to improve water quality and create habitat. An example also in Southern California of an infiltration basin in which we think of urban-sourced water supplies. Think of aquifer recharge and recovery in the urban environment. Think of stormwater capture, for example. Those would be examples of what we could do in the future to enhance our water supply portfolio. And then at the level of management and systems integration, I show some examples here of working with cities and thinking about how we might do things at the scale of a city or subpart of a city. Show here for Palo Alto and Aurora near Denver, for example. But also looking at the sort of larger picture, the whole metro scale view. Imagine the whole of the Bay Area, the whole of the Denver Front Range. And we ask the question, well, how does a disruptive technology fit into that? How does the system change in response? How do we manage systems so that they are economically viable in the future? How do we change pricing strategies? How do we overcome and understand better regulations and opportunities to change or get around regulations? How do we embrace urban planning as part of a reinvented urban water infrastructure? These are all areas in which we are working. And the way this graphic is laid out, that we understand the importance of working at the levels of systems in order to affect change. We can do all the best work in sort of engineered technologies and natural systems, but if we don't understand the bigger picture in which these systems are placed, then we won't affect change. In the area of education and outreach, we see education and outreach to decision makers, and decision makers here would be mayors, for example, business leaders and the like, leaders of nonprofits who can become advocates of change for us. And we would judge our success here by the extent to which these kinds of organizations would be embracing the ideas that come from our Engineering Research Center. We talked at this last session about the opportunities for centers to provide educational opportunities, and we see for our graduates and undergraduates that gaining a systems-level view, systems-level understanding is key to their future success, and also an international perspective that can come with our international partners and working with the large companies that have an international reach. And then at the level of at K through 12, using the theme of water to inspire young scholars. Two examples, we are working on the design of a new science center at a high school in the Bay Area that can become a regional educational resource, a very exciting opportunity where that science center will be focused on water. And then imagining engaging K through, I see the clock going out, teachers.
It's a challenge.
I almost did it.
Good luck.
Thank you. Which one forward? This one, obviously. First of all, I am not Christiana Hansberg, the director for Quest. Unfortunately, I have to express her apologies. She was unable to travel and come here and present this herself. But my name is Matt Fraser. I'm the executive director for the Quantum Energy and Sustainable Solar Technologies. And on behalf of our partners, and their logos are listed on the bottom, including Caltech, University of Delaware, MIT, University of New Mexico, University of Arizona, Georgia Tech, and University of Houston. It's a great pleasure to be here and talk about our vision. Specifically, we're really focused on what we're calling the Terawatt Challenge, which was first articulated about 15 years ago by the late Rick Smalley from Rice University, who recognized in order to supply energy to the globe on the scale that we enjoy here in the United States, you have to generate truly massive amounts of energy, terawatts worth of energy. And you have to do it in a way that doesn't degrade the environment, is truly sustainable and not reliable on any fossil sources of energy, and also is affordable on a global sense. And what Quest is really about is developing technology, education, and innovation approaches to address this terawatt challenge through photovoltaics. Now, why photovoltaics? If you ask me, I would argue that photovoltaics is one of the true only technologies that really can meet the terawatt challenge. And the reason I say that is that if you look at the last 15 years in the data shown here, photovoltaics has grown by about 30 to 40% per year over the last 15 years. And if we continue on that growth curve, in the near future, in the lifetime of our center, we will be meeting all demand for new electricity through photovoltaics, and hopefully in the next couple of years after the center on a global scale. And that's important because once you're meeting all demand for new energy, you can retire dirtier, more polluting forms of energy. So with that, let's talk about how do you maintain that growth rate. Obviously, what's continued to grow the photovoltaic industry is as the industry has grown, prices have come down. And if you look at the bottom here, one of the most important parameters for PV is cost per watt of capacity. But that doesn't necessarily have to be a linear relationship with decreasing cost with increasing scale of the industry. You could hit technology plateaus where you have you lose the continual decrease in price as the industry grows. But if we want to reach terawatts, you have to continue down a linear curve to the point where you're making very large amounts of photovoltaic systems at truly lower cost. And if you look at the history of the PV industry, and specifically this is the silica-based PV industry, we have continued down that experience curve. Of course, there have been temporary plateaus where you reach a technology barrier. You have to overcome that technology barrier, but you always seem to come back to this experience curve going forward. So growing a larger industry is obviously much more difficult than growing a small industry, but what we want to do is to develop a research roadmap which plots out potential technology barriers so that we can conduct fundamental science and technology research to overcome those barriers before they impact the industry. Now, of course, we have a tremendous installed capacity in photovoltaic manufacturing, and so we don't want to throw that capacity out. We rather want to work with the existing industry to continue to drive improvements in efficiency of the systems and lower the cost of those systems. So we're really taking an evolutionary path to revolutionize devices for energy systems. Now, defining the research for a large center in the limited time we have is obviously very difficult. I just put up some of our top research goals here. The first one is obviously to develop new technologies that are scalable, meaning they can be manufactured in large systems to really meet terawatt challenges in a sustainable solar approach. Some of the different technologies were listed are shown there with the target efficiencies for our first 5 years going forward. But as the price of these modules comes down, we're finding that the balance of systems and the cost associated with installation and integration and maintenance is becoming more and more important. So some of our research test beds are looking at the engineered systems. And specifically, we're looking at things including building integrated photovoltaics in one of our test beds, where you integrate photovoltaics into the building system so that you can lower the costs of those installations and ease installations into the building environment. We're also looking towards the operation of these facilities. And as you roll out massive plants that have millions of individual panels, monitoring the performance of individual panels becomes more and more difficult. And so we're looking to integrate wireless communications in the semiconductor devices used for the photovoltaic systems so that you can more effectively monitor performance of individual panels and so you can ensure proper operation for these large arrays that are going out. And finally, with any ERC, you obviously have a balance between technology development, but also high-risk, high-reward projects so that you continue to feed the pipeline with revolutionary technologies that can come online further downstream and continue to advance the improvements in price and performance of photovoltaic systems. I also want to focus on education and outreach. Specifically, we're targeting learning at all levels and engaging students in developing a photovoltaic workforce that's trained in photovoltaic science and technology, which is capable of continuing to advance the solar industry forward. At our kickoff meeting about a month ago, we had a very interesting conversation with some of our industry partners that we recognize that while it takes about 18 months to build a new manufacturing facility to manufacture photovoltaic panels, it takes about 4 years to actually train the scientists and engineers to staff and operate that panel. So working with our industrial partners to ensure that we're training students to advance the solar industry is very important to us. But beyond that, our education director, Jennifer Huseman, who is here in the audience, is also very interested in engineering education research and understanding what the most effective pedagogical approach is in incorporating effective engineering education into new curriculum and new programs so that we can ensure that we're educating using those most effective tools going forward. And then finally, our approach for diversity is recognizing that we have a 10-year life cycle of our center and working to increase diversity through first reaching out to a diverse group of middle and high schools to recruit undergraduate students from a diverse community and then work to retain those students through our undergraduate and graduate programs so that we can then go forward with a diverse workforce in industry and faculty.
Okay, red one? Okay, is it on? Yes, I'm here to try to explain to you what's the great vision we have for the Freedom Systems Center. Freedom Systems Center is established to address the issue of the energy, of course, but the question is how do you do it? I think revolutionary renewable energy technology play a key role, but our vision is a little bit different. I think there is a great element missing in create a lot of renewable energy and sustainable energy in our grid. That is the involvement of every one of us in the total energy market. So we see that's a very important missing piece in transforming the industry from a very passive business model to a very active business model, similar to the transformation we need or we saw in the computing industry or information industry, where today every one of us are involved in the creation, storing, and sharing of the information technology. So envision a total energy market where every one of us are involved in the generation, storing, and sharing of the electric energy. So that's basically the big picture for the Freedom Systems Center. So we realized to reach that, today's grid is not adequate to do that. So we need to create a revolutionary power grid. So it's more important to focus on the enabling technology to deliver and manage the energy than the energy itself. That's our big hypothesis. Of course, it will take 50 years to prove that's true. But look at the history of the information industry. We think this is a very important piece for our center. So we focus on developing a grid that is suitable for us to do this. If you can do this, you can consider we're reaching a point of small grid 2.0 or an energy internet era where every one of us can plug and play with the technology, generation, storing the energy, and sharing the energy. So that's the key vision for the center. The two key technology we're focusing on to enable this to happen. One is information technology, software and communication technology, secure software, secure communication technology, and the revolutionary power electronics technology. Because power electronic technology Thus, one thing that today's grid cannot do is to allow us to provide the separation of the dynamics of the user action to the global grid stability. So one of the key technologies the center is developing is called small transformer using semiconductor technology to replace today's transformer. And this technology is named one of the top 10 technologies that could affect our life. And we already see a big industry investment into this area. Another major success we have is in our pre-college program, leveraging already strong education ecosystem. We are able to reach many, many school kids, and in particular, our graduate students are involved in the outreach of the pre-college program. Thank you.
This one here is forward? Yep. Okay, so when I see it here, it's up there? Yep. Okay. Yep. There we go. Hi, I'm Kevin Thomasvik from University of Tennessee. Talk about the Center for Ultra-Wide Area Resilient Electric Energy Networks. Almost not sure if I get that whole title in the 7 minutes. We're partners with Rensselaer Polytechnic, Northeastern, and Tuskegee University. And what we're focused on is sort of the polar end of what Alex was just talking about, which is the high voltage transmission of the grid. We're interested in being able to integrate renewables into the grid in an efficient way, high reliability, low cost, all the good things, but to really accommodate the renewable sources so we can use them fully. So there's a couple of key technology drivers here, or I should say first, one of the key drivers of focusing on a transmission system is that renewable sources tend to be variable, so they tend to have energy when you're not necessarily needing it, so you need to be able to move the power where it is needed. And then, so networks provide you that added reliability and also efficiency. They can be in places where, the wind blows a lot north of South Dakota, but we're probably not ever going to have a lot of population there. So you want to be able to move it out of lower demand areas into higher demand areas. So what are the key technology drivers here? First has been some revolutions in the measurement technologies for the power grids. For the power folks in here, that's PMUs. It stands for Phasor Measurement Units. And what it is using a signal from the GPS satellite to get a precise synchronization of measurement of voltage and current. And what this allows you to do is to get synchronized measurements for phase. And knowing phase and the magnitude of the quantities on the network essentially gives you a snapshot of the grid. And you can get the snapshot of the state of the grid instantaneously, then you know a little bit more about what you're doing. You can think about what we're doing today with a grid, which is maybe you take measurements and every few seconds, but you don't really run a detailed analysis of them for 5-10 minutes. So we're sort of flying the grid by taking a snapshot, closing our eyes, opening them again 5 minutes later, and seeing where we're at, right? Phasor measurements would allow us to be constantly monitoring where the grid is. We should be able to push it closer to the system. Partner to that is sort of the poor man's phasor measurement unit, the FDR, developed by ELU, which is a low-cost measurement unit, which allows you to get the state information in a very simple and inexpensive way. So that's one driver. Another driver for looking at this problem is communications. If you know something about the power grid, you'll know most communication systems were based on 1960s technology. It's hierarchical. It's very slow. It's not open. There's not sharing of point-to-point information that comes to the control center. So this is another driver for us. And then the other technology driver is we'll kind of lump together in terms of actuation. It's some ability to move power on the grid. And this is in a very broad way. We mean actuation. So whether it's a control device, traditional control device like a power system stabilizer or some other generator controls, or even the renewables themselves, which have the ability to modify their outputs based on controls. Maybe it doesn't give you maximum efficiency, but it gives you the controls you need to keep the system within the proper limits. And then other things like responsive load at the lower voltages, or high power electronics for, say, DC transmission, or fax devices, flexible AC transmission systems that allow you to move power in a faster way. So together these come together, and I think the real theme in the center is then it's control. How do we get these components together to operate the system, control the system in a dynamic way? Okay, so in terms of research goals, basically this slide says, grid past bad, grid future good, right? All the things we used to be very static, inefficient from an economic standpoint. We have large margins in the way we operate the system. We just sort of overbuild the system and then just let the load come on when it wants and do the things it wants. Grid future, what we'd like to see is being able to incorporate whatever sources we can, whatever margin we can. We'd like to get that margin down. If the load is going to be intermittent, if the source is going to be intermittent, that's fine. We want to be able to incorporate in the system and basically just operate in a very flexible way. Ideally, we want to be able to operate the system with zero margin, fully incorporate whatever renewables are out there with sources, and have it to be low cost, highly reliable, convenient, and so on. In terms of education and our university program, we in the power industry have not had much hiring in the last 15, 20 years, so like many fields, there's an aging workforce. And on top of that, the type of technologies that we're considering for the future grid are very different than the traditional heavy machinery technology. So we need to educate a new workforce. We need to attract a more diverse student body, obviously, to that as well for this next generation. I think in terms of what is our big focus of our education program is sort of a holistic approach. So incorporating recruitment, retention, the whole learning assessment, all that in our outreach program. So we really want it to be an integrated whole of how we reach out to the students, keep them around, understand how they learn. We want to push this outreach into the K through 12 maybe further than it's being done at some of the centers, and to reach into the elementary schools, even start very early in encouraging students to consider engineering, introduce some engineering concepts at those early ages. And then overall, we want our education approach to be theory-based. We want it to have a true research model. We want to learn about what we're doing in terms of education, understand that, make improvements, test our theories, test our ideas about what works in education, and we find what doesn't work, make improvements, or find what does work, extend those out. So actually, it's pretty amazing. I finished 30 seconds early. So.
Now we're going to shift to advanced manufacturing technology.
Let's wait for the... Okay. It's good to be here. I'm introducing the Center for Compact and Efficient Fluid Power, and we call that CCFP for short. So far as our mission statement, it's right on on the masthead of our homepage of our website. You can see it right here. Changing the way fluid power is researched, applied, and taught. And our vision is to make fluid power compact, efficient, and effective. And what we mean by compact is smaller and lighter for the same capabilities. Efficient refers to saving energy, and effective is a catch-all phrase that sort of means, which means making things clean, quiet, safe, and easy to use. Now, as our one research home run, I've selected the excavator that was also discussed by Lynn Preston earlier. By replacing the lossy displacement or throttling valves with displacement control, we've saved over half of the energy in this particular excavator, and this has been independently validated in field tests at Caterpillar. Now, this is representative of a very large class of equipment, and if it could be used in many of these other classes of equipment, the savings would be very large indeed. And let me give you some idea of what this might be. A recent Department of Energy funded study conducted by the National Fluid Power Association, National Fluid Power Association, indicated that something between 2.3% and 3.1% of all the energy in our country is transmitted with fluid power. So it's a huge amount of energy. And furthermore, it's transmitted very inefficiently. Average efficiency, 20%. So it's a huge opportunity for saving energy. If we could save 1% of the energy we use in our country, and this is a kind of target you could shoot for, if we could save 1% of the energy that we use in our country, that would be a savings of $20 billion a year in imported oil. So it's a huge potential impact. And I haven't even talked about the impact of using fluid power in areas where it's never been used before. So the impact is very large indeed. So that's our research home run for the year. So far as an education success story, I've chosen the Fluid Power Scholars Program. This is an internship in industry, but there's certain things that we can bring at a center that industry itself can't bring. First of all, our visibility means we get a much, I think, better pool of candidates for our companies. And furthermore, we give them some training. So every student that goes through this internship program, the Fluid Power Scholars Program, also gets training at Milwaukee School of Engineering before they go to their internships. You can see the logos of the 9 companies that have participated. We have a very high repeat rate, and we expect this program to grow in future years. It's the second year of operation now.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Brent Shanks. I'm the director for the Center for Biorenewable Chemicals. And the vision of our center is looking at transforming the chemical industry from moving from our current source, which is crude oil, to biological based. And the current industry that really, as I mentioned, comes from crude oil, goes through chemical catalysis to a wide range of different products. And a lot of people ask the question, do you do fuels? And absolutely, we don't do fuels. We're completely in the chemical space. And if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, what you'll see is that in a typical barrel of oil, quite a bit of it goes for transportation. Only about 3 or 4 to 5% of it goes to chemicals. But the value of the chemicals, that's where you've seen the larger numbers, is equivalent to that of the fuels. And so it's very important for me to emphasize we're only looking at that slice of the barrel. So we're really looking at the sustainability of the chemical industry and not in trying to save foreign oil per se. Now, the challenge with that chemical industry, however, is it goes to a whole range of different products. As you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, all the things around you, all the polymers, plastics, little tight schoolhouses, that's all based on crude oil. And so what we're looking at is trying to go into that very distributed market with new chemicals, ones that can directly replace those chemicals. Now, that creates the challenge of, as opposed to in the fuel sector where you have 3 products, you have hundreds of chemicals. And so how do you go about creating a transformational technology that has to create hundreds of products? And so what we've looked at, and you can see in the oval, is we've looked at combining technology from both the biological conversion as well as chemical conversion to try to create a generalized framework to make these chemicals more cost effectively. The generalized is very important because the market is so fractured. We need to come up with technology that can make a whole range of different products. And so for the highlight I want to give is one of our test beds that has evolved after the first year of our center is we biologically produce pyrones, and then we can take chemical catalysts to make a whole range of different products. Now, the reason why this test bed is so important is it exists because of Seeberg. No biological person, and maybe even Jay can speak to this next, would have ever thought of why would I make pyrone as an intermediate? And the answer is it has no use other than as an intermediate that we can take and give the chemical catalyst people, and they can convert it to a range of different products. So this test bed really demonstrated the power of getting together people that did biological catalyst work and chemical catalysts working together to create a new paradigm for the types of chemicals that you could make.
Well, that was a great introduction to what I'm going to talk about. Imagine if you wanted to produce all those chemicals that we just heard about. Imagine if you wanted to say, take all the sugar that we now have in our agriculture sector and turn it into a fuel to replace the petroleum-based fuels. Imagine if you wanted to produce a drug that would cure diseases and produce that inexpensively and just as we need it. We can imagine that the engineered systems to accomplish all of those goals might be biological. For instance, you could engineer a microbial chemical factory to produce some complicated drugs or to produce fuels and chemicals that could be used in our current chemical infrastructure. We might be able to engineer a plant that would fix its own nitrogen and save all of the nitrogen-based fertilizers that we now produce and which consume about 1% of the world's energy. We might be able to engineer stem cells that would resist disease and be able to form replacement organs. Now, to do that, you would, of course, need off-the-shelf components, things like chassis that you could host all of the genes that would allow you to transform a simple sugar into a complex chemical. You'd need control systems, genetic control systems that would allow you to do that. And of course, you'd need all the genes that would encode the enzymes in a metabolic pathway to do those complex chemical transformations. And of course, to do that, you'd have to set standards for all of those components. You'd have to develop compositions so that you could take small functioning parts and turn them into devices that could function inside the cell. Of course, you'd have to think about the landscape of patents and how these devices and systems would be distributed. And of course, because everything in technology is dual use, you'd have to think about biosafety and biosecurity. Now, biological engineering has been around for a long time. We've had it since the advent of genetic engineering in the early 70s, and many people have had the goals of replacing nitrogen-based fertilizers, building microbes that could produce drugs and fuels and chemicals. But because the biological community didn't think about off-the-shelf components and a knowledge base underlying that, they weren't able to develop low-cost solutions, biological solutions to these problems. Biology has been hindered by long development times and therefore extreme costs. We believe through synthetic biology that we can reduce the time to develop all of these solutions and increase their reliability by having well-characterized standard components and design tools. So the goal in the Synthetic Biology Engineering Research Center is to, is to make the engineering of biology easier. In 2006, we brought together people from these institutions to do this. Thanks for your time.
Last one.
Yeah.
So that's forward, and you're trying to be there.
And the last speaker has unlimited time, right? No. Okay. So I'm Fernando Mucio. I'm the director of CSOPS. When we, 6 years ago, almost to the date, started doing this, we had originally thought we were going to be the ERC for pharmaceuticals. But we fell in love with the whole concept that there is a whole bunch of things made of organic particles, and we need to build engineered systems out of organic particles for many different uses. And there is a lot of different industries that do precisely this. I mean, those include food and cosmetics and agrochemicals and a lot of that. However, as we started doing the work, it turned out that the pharmaceutical industry decided to go into a major crisis mode. We more or less expected it. We never expected it was going to get so serious. You have all heard about tens of thousands of people laid off and so on and so forth. What happened really was that the business model shifted from owning molecules to owning processes and owning integrated systems. Now, our original mission statement was, I guess the animations here have a life of their own. Where should I point with this thing? Where's the computer really? Oh boy. Okay, well, it's not shifting. Well, there you go. So we have 4 elements in our mission statement. The first element was to understand the material science of integrated systems based on organic particles. The second point of our mission statement, and this slide is 6 years old, was to understand the science and the engineering needed to actually manufacture these things in a systematic fashion. Third element was to put in place educational and technology transfer vehicles that would actually allow us to have impact. And the last one was to have effective ways of bringing a diverse population of scientists and scholars into the picture. Now, I need to take a minute to explain what this actually means in the context of pharma. So let me try to take a minute to explain how pharma works. I only have 1 minute left. This is not going to work. So I'm going to just make two statements. All the household names, you know, Pfizer, Merck, Bristol Myers Squibb, Johnson & Johnson, they make 9% of all the pharmaceutical products consumed by people worldwide. You don't even know who makes the other 91%. It turns out it's not engineers for the most part. It's basically pharmaceutical scientists and chemists and biologists and so on and so forth. But for the most part, it's people who never had a single course of advanced calculus. And they're supposed to design integrated manufacturing systems. So in order to have impact, we figured that we needed a portfolio approach, and we focused on two things. One, we wanted to make products cheaper to make and better. So we focused very heavily on integrated continuous manufacturing systems. This means that all the pieces work at the same time in an integrated fashion in a state of closed-loop control, and you can make a pharmaceutical product in a matter of hours as opposed to the current industry standard, which takes about 6 months, because it's all batch and it's all in an open loop state, okay? Now, do I really need to stop here? Where are they all going? Okay, okay, she said two.
All right.
The other portion of our portfolio was we wanted to have impact on the industry of the future. So the other thing we do is we develop integrated manufacturing systems for personalized medicine. We're not interested in the omics part of that. We're interested in how you make it for the individual. Now, in terms of highlights, I'm only going to focus on one thing very quickly. I have another talk tomorrow on this, no, Thursday. And that is basically this project, Inspire, which is basically something we were able to do because of the commercialization funds that were made available 2 years ago. And we were very lucky. We got one of those awards. And we focused then on being able to commercialize the integrated continuous manufacturing technology that we have been developing for several years. And very quickly, this led to a grant from Johnson & Johnson, who has now announced that they're going to invest $15 million in building in Puerto Rico the first integrated continuous manufacturing system for pharma based on the basic designs that have been developed in our center. So with that, I will stop. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank all of our speakers. I think you all did a great job, and I know that's very challenging to get all that information in either 3 or 7 minutes, so I appreciate you doing that.